Hello everyone, and welcome to the official premiere of the latest release of Persistence Manager for SAP Process Orchestration and Business Process Management. My name is Todor Petrov, and today with my colleague Vanelin Syarov, we're going to present you some new and exciting features which we have been working on for the past year to bring you this solution, which we think is going to change the way business processes are built in the future. So let me present you a few important things before we start. Of course, the webinar is targeted to people that normally take some specific role within a business process delivery, and those in the general setting would be, of course, there should be a business team that have a demand for a specific process, giving the business requirements, how the process should run, what it should do, and of course, on which business objects it should bring data and approvals on. Then, of course, we would have process teams who are taking those business requirements, doing process analysis on them, and designing the business process in the most flexible and the most suitable way for the respective business object. And of course, we should not forget also the technical teams who then have to develop and implement the different interfaces, being either user interfaces or system interfaces that will communicate in the respective system. So this webinar is for all of you, and you'll see later also why exactly. What we're going to learn in this webinar is which common areas of a project, of a business process management project are addressed with the Persistence Manager, or shortly we can call it in the presentation PM. What lies behind that abbreviation? Of course, we're going to talk about the product itself, what it brings, how does it work, what would it achieve for your company if you install it within your on-premise landscape, and of course we're going to give some hints about the installation and the configuration, and probably the most interesting part would be a live demo of the framework where we're going to show you some of the key features. We won't have time to show you everything, but if interest is there, we are always open for an additional demo. Something very important for those of you taking the course, you can apply for a IBsolution certificate at the end of the course. You're going to receive an email with a specific link where you have to answer some questions from the presentation, and if you manage to get the right amount of answers correct, then you are going to receive also a certificate that you have watched and understood this webinar session. As I mentioned already, my name is Todor Petrov, and my colleague Vanelin Syarov will help me with the live demo of the product. So let's start. First topic of our agenda would be to describe and to see what challenges lie ahead in the adoption of a business process management system. And as we mentioned in one of the first slides, the usual setup and responsibilities within such a project involve more or less three teams, like a business team who is defining the process, creating, of course, prioritizing the strategic importance of a certain process in front of another, so of course defining the sequence of which business processes will be delivered within the company, and suggesting who might be the process participants and owners of this process. Then we have a process team who is capturing, creating the process diagram, mostly in a BPMN and language, and of course they have to analyze, detect where possible issues might come, create the process in such a way that the cases where some problem with the process appears are limited, and handle those, of course, properly. work on the process continuous improvement once the process is already live, because this is not the, let's say, not the end of the process life cycle. And of course, monitor and report on important KPIs which have been defined for the specific process. The technical team, on the other hand, is designing the executable process model based on the delivered process diagram from the process team, designing the user interfaces which will be used in the human activities along the process, because so far we are not yet reached the phase where everything is automated. Of course, some human interaction will be required, and this human interaction, of course, have to be very user-friendly and available on any device. I'm going to speak about that a little bit later. Of course, they have to implement the service interfaces and functions which will be used within the process, because this process in most of the cases communicates with a lot of other systems, SAP and non-SAP systems. And once the process is live, of course, they will also be required to support the process team in resolving any issues that might be found within the process flow. There are specific task outcomes that are aligned to each of those teams, and you can see those on the right-hand side. So important process objects have to be defined by the business team, as we already spoke about that. Defined value outcome. So of course, the process is not built just for the sake of having a process. It should really have some benefit of that process, and this benefit is something that the business team defines and later is measured by the KPIs which the process team is monitoring in the already running process. And of course, the business team is the one that should probably define, in a large organization where many companies are spread around the world, which of those probably will start as a pilot company, or which of those organizations will take part in the first version of the process, which will join later as a rollout, and so forth. Once this is defined, the process team should draw or design the control flow, what will happen, when and how, and of course define the monitoring reporting KPIs which are needed in order to be able to measure this valued outcome of the process which the business requires. And of course there will be artifacts which will be needed inside the process, and those will be defined again by the process team. Handling over to the technical team, they will as we said, design the executable process model, which is the PPM diagram, create some mock-ups for the user interfaces, which will be then reviewed by the process and the business team, and if approved, then can change into a real user interfaces, which will be used also later in the productive system. They will make sure that the system interconnectivity is working also fine, meaning, of course, different systems communicate with the business process management system in order to bring or to read or to write some data out of the process. And most importantly, this is the last point in the slide, but really one of the very important ones, is to bring not only a quality support, but also standardized support for all processes running in the organization, because in most cases, different processes are delivered by different consulting companies or by different individuals, and each of them have his own idea about how a certain business process should run. And later, when this is handed over to the support, leads to a lot of distraction and supporting multiple different workflows with multiple different implementation scenarios, which is not always a very easy case to handle. So how Persistence Manager addresses those challenges which we just spoke about? One thing it does, it merges the three teams into one team. So the business team, the process team, and the technical team become one team. It's the PM team. And the PM team, as you can imagine, has a very simplified coordination and communication, because they use a common platform for all their requirements, which we see also here listed in the slide. What they achieve is they organize all processes using a common framework, which is the Persistence Manager framework, which we're going to see also live later in the process. They use intuitive business roles instead of technical groups and roles and direct users for defining participants and owners in the process. And they are also have access to reusing best practices and proven techniques from other processes which were delivered by us actually for other customers, and those are proven to be working very good, and those can be simply reused within the scenario, and this of course saves time and brings the process to a different level of quality. They have access to real-time dashboards which are reporting the real status of all processes available in the framework, and according to a recommendation from SAP, the whole framework is keeping the footprint of the process context also to a very low level, so very small amount of data is stored in the process context, making it very quick to be read and write to. And also defining we have also a very neat and easy to read process diagram containing a lot of comments, meaning each of the steps is commented, and for a business person it's very easy to read the diagram and to understand what happens without the additional help of a technical consultant. One of the interesting features, which we're going to see also later, of course, is that our user interfaces are auto-generated. So whenever you need some change in the user interface, it's more or less a configuration issue and not a developer issue. So you don't really need somebody from the technical team to develop your interfaces. They are there out of the box, and you just have to configure them and use them in your process. We're going to see also how that affects a bit later. We have a mapping assistant which is going to help also with the service interfaces, or the service interconnectivity between the systems, meaning you can map different protocols between as an input and an output from the framework. And the last thing, of course, which I mentioned also in the previous slide, it brings a standardized approach to how business processes are delivered within a company. And this standardized approach then pays a lot of dividends later when the support takes over. And once they know how one process is running, they can support all of them because they are built in a very common way. So what is actually PM? I'm also sure you're wondering yourself. It's a rapid deployment solution for fast BPM process delivery and standardized support. And what it brings you is it's a multi-tenant solution. So this means you can create as many processes, instances of processes as you want in your system. There is no limitation there. So you can bring into that solution all your business process which you have currently in your landscape, or any new processes which you might want to organize and to coordinate through that solution. And what that would bring you is we achieved in the past the maximum reduction of time which we managed to achieve was about the 50%, with the project which had to run in 6 months, and we managed to finish it in 3 months, running the persistence manager on top of the BPM solution from SAP. You'll see also later how easy things are being set up. So we can also talk about it, and you can ask your questions at the end if there are such. The other important thing is it's business oriented with a lot of customizing options which are very easy to understand for the business or for the process team, making the role of the technical teams, let's say, only in terms of designing the process, which of course cannot be omitted, so somebody has to design the process, but once the process is designed, everything else is up to the customizing and handling special tasks with wizard-based UIs, which are leading the end user into the right options which he has to choose. And this requires, of course, no coding whatsoever in order to change an already running process. This leads in most of the times, of course, to a quality improvement, because when you don't have to write any code, then you cannot make any bugs. That's clear. So once the code is gone and already pre-defined for you and pre-prepared, then the implementation and the standardization are taking place, and they're leading to improvements, which are not only, as we said, in the quality and the support, but also using best practices and proven techniques for each of the project phases in order to achieve that 50% reduction in time, which we mentioned already. How does it work? Basically, there are three things that have to be done. There is a design phase, a configure phase, and a run phase. It's that simple. There's only three phases. And of course, the design phase would be something that happens outside of the persistence manager. So you have to design the process, the steps, how it's going, the business process diagram, how it's going to look like, where are the different steps, which approvals are happening in parallel or sequential. All of this have to be done in the design phase. And then persistence manager takes the control and is responsible for the configuration and running the respective solution. What you can do with the configuration, and we're going to see also a little bit in the demo, but shortly right now we can focus on two main areas which are part of this of the persistence manager. One of them is called the process administration, and this is where you define your process generics, like the name of the process, the description, the owner of the process, who are the contributors in the process, what kind of security you're going to use in the process, and so forth. Then you can hand it over to the process control center, who is taking care of the process configuration of the versions which you might have within the process, the user interface generation, some value helps management, and so forth. We see there's a lot of options here, so we'll see some of those in the live demo. Then what happens is that you are ready to run, and the run, of course, is the process runtime, where you can have reusable best practices with different elements and complete sub-processes which we deliver out of the box. Of course, the auto-generated user interfaces are there in the process runtime, and you can use them in the different human steps which are available in the process. We are building a so-called non-suspendable runtime process, which means that it's highly unlikely that you receive a process that is suspended in your managed process monitoring tool. What we do is we always try to get such suspendable process to a human task which has to take action, and then this action will solve the problem automatically in the process without leading to some cancelled process or some process that cannot be used anymore. Another very important thing which goes along with the business process management, for those of you who use that already, is of course the business rules management. And there we also provide a lot of templates and ready to run business rules which help you achieve large scale functionality and flexibility in your process, and help you also run your process in a more generic way. Of course, once the process is run, you would love to know what's going on with that process, and there we go to the process reporting, which is bringing you, as I said, real-time status about your process, if it's already finished, who has approved what, full audit trail of the changes that you have inside, and performance monitoring of how your process is currently doing, if it's slow, if the user interface is opening in the right amount of time, if the service interface are responding correctly, and so forth. And of course, you can always build alerts for predefined KPIs on top of that, so you can monitor and make sure that the value of this process that was defined by the business is also achieved in the right way. We're going to see that also later in the demo. What does Persistence Manager achieve? So we already spoke about that a couple of times, but let's focus on that slide right now. Having four aspects of the diagram. One of them is flexibility, meaning to what extent your process is flexible to changes. So this means you are able to do what kind of changes are you able to do without actually having to change the code or having to change something which is quite crucial and would require an additional transport. And you see that from a flexibility point of view, the persistence manager is really bringing things to another level. And we'll see that also in the demo later, that mostly everything can be customized, of course, apart from if you have to change the diagram in general, but this is a change which is also quite substantial, because if you change the diagram, then that would mean also that you would like to change the process itself. And this is something, of course, which cannot be avoided and has to be done manually. But apart from this, all other aspects which we spoke about can be customized just by using the persistence manager framework. From cost saving perspective, plan less, spend less, pay less. Of course, who would have to say anything against that? Of course, how we prove that point is that we already spoke about the fact that the persistence manager is a multi-tenant application, and this means once you acquire a license for that product, you can use it for all your processes within the system. So the more processes you put inside the persistence manager, the more saving you are actually doing, because you don't pay new licenses. You are simply reusing the already existing solution you have and building on top new functionalities, new processes which run exactly the same way you also built your other processes which are already available in the persistence manager. The time to production, we already mentioned that. We managed to achieve 50% reduction of the time scope running a project for 6 months in 3 months with the persistence manager framework. And of course, once the project is live, you are ready to do another one. And this is great, because this means that in 6 months you can achieve actually 2 projects live instead of only 1. With regards to quality, this is something, of course, which we also spoke about. It's first point of the quality is, of course, that we are bringing you predefined auto-generated user interface which can be customized, but the customizing cannot change the way the user interface is already built, so there's no code change, and this, of course, limits the possibility to bring any errors inside the program. So all the customizing is error-free and injects absolutely no code inside the persistence manager, and this, of course, limits the possibility of having potential quality problems. And of course, from the other perspective, quality in terms of support. As I said, if you build all your processes using one and the same framework and using one and the same approach, then the support is much more easier than if all your processes are built in a different way. Some words about the installation, the configuration. It's a package we're going to deliver is a ready to run out of the box solution. So you just need to basically deploy it on your system, which should be SAP Process Orchestration or SAP NetWeaver 7.3 and up, which is already not a very actual requirement. So most of the people already have that solution. For those of you that don't, then an upgrade scenario should be taken into consideration before that. And the persistence manager will deliver basically the core functionalities like process administration and process control center, of which we already spoke about. And on top of that, there are 4 additional packages which can be deployed. Of course, one of them, quite the most important, probably would be the runtime, where we have the customizable generated runtime user interface. We have adaptive process logic, which is taking care of these non-suspendable processes, intelligent business rules, which we also spoke about, different templates which we bring to the customer, and of course the runtime is also process object specific. So this means it's there's one runtime for each of the process which you would like to run, because each of the different processes have different requirements. What doesn't change for any of the processes, of course, would be the core. Everything else around is dependent on the process you would like to run. So of course the reporting, for some process you would like to have one type of reporting, for another one you would like to have a different type of reporting. That's also no problem. For the mapping assistant, you have different service interfaces for each of the process. Of course, this has to be taken into consideration. You have to be able to do mapping between those external interfaces, no matter if they are for, let's say, a material workflow or for a customer workflow or whatever, or for a vacation workflow. The lifecycle management of a process is some very important topic, and of course we also thought about that and how you are able to change different revisions and different versions of a specific process. We're going to show you in the demo that it's also possible with the persistence manager, where we have different version revisions, and those version revisions are taken into consideration into the process. So you're able to run different versions of a process in parallel, which saves you a lot of hassle of having to transport all the small changes that you will have to do through the 3-tier landscape in your system. All right. So having said that, I think it's about time to jump to the demo. I will hand over the control to my colleague Annelien, who is going to show you the framework. And we're going to start with the process administration, which is part of the core, as you've seen in the last slide. And on the picture here, you're able to see we already have created a few processes, like the customer process, holiday leave, material process, vendor process, and you can create as many as you want here. The number of processes is absolutely unlimited. So you can, as I said, build all your processes inside the same framework, paying only one time the license, which is for the product. And what you can do here is what we already spoke about. You define a name, a description. You see there are 2 columns which are working and active version. We're going to talk about it a little bit later, but just keep that in mind. And you have also an owner of the process, who is basically the responsible person for that process and for its running operations. You have the possibility to also lock a specific process, and by locking the process you are blocking the end users from accessing it. This is let's say if you have a maintenance window, or if you have some other things which you want to do and you want to block the end users from accessing this workflow, just click on that button, give a reason, and then the reason is displayed also to the end users, and they cannot access the workflow anymore. But this is not blocking your configuration access to the process. So also this is a nice feature. If you have some problems in the workflow and you want to solve them, you just lock it. It's not available for the end users, but it's available for the admin users who are able to test it and to access it in the configuration in order to change something and make it work. Okay, so let's click on one of the configure options here and see what comes next. So this is a guided wizard, which gives you a basic idea about what you have to configure in the beginning of the process. So of course the name, the description, that's clear. You are able to set the default language, which after that cannot be changed from here, only from the process control center, but we're going to see that. And also you see you are able to change the request number which will be generated for your processes. So this way you can make different request numbers for your different types of processes. So let's say for vendor you have process which start with 100,000, for material for 200,000, for holiday leave with 900,000 or whatever. So you have some kind of a prefix which you can define here, and this prefix will be used every time you generate your next request number. You see also the owner, and below the owner you'll see the contributors to the process which currently are attached. Let's go to the next step. The next step is showing you the different security roles which are available with their properties, and those security roles are used later in the process control center in order to be able to give access to people to certain specific areas within your process. So for example, if you have somebody, let's say a translator from an external agency, you don't want him to have access to all your different configurations and reporting and transport and everything. The only thing you want him to have is the localization row, and this is where you can attach that localization row and use it to give access to that person. So let's go to the next step. Those rows, of course, have two different flavors. One flavor would be the view, and the other flavor would be modify. So this means, of course, if you have only view permissions, you'll be able to browse the process and look at the different configurations and export them in Excel, but you won't be able to change them. So you'll be able, let's say, to view everything in a view mode. If you have, however, the modify action, then you are able to change also that respective part. So as we said in the example for the translator, if we have the localization and you want somebody to translate something, then the option would be either to give them the view permission so he can export all the texts from the processes manager and export and translate them in Excel and send them to you per email, or you can give him directly the modify action, and then this means that he will be able to translate all the text directly in the processes manager. The last step, of course, would be basically the assignment. So all those security roles which we have seen in the previous step have to be assigned to real persons, so real users or groups, and those users and groups can be attached using that button. There are two options. One option would be to attach a role to a user, and the other option would be to attach a security role to a person. So you have both options just to make it more easy. So if you have one person to which you want to attach multiple roles, then you just simply add the person here and you can attach the different security roles to his assignment. Okay, let's jump into this process control center. And the process control center is displaying in the beginning all the process for which the respective user has privileges. And in this case, we have privileges for all 4 processes. So we have the option here to start the process control center either for a working or for an active version. And as I said, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. So let's open the working version for now. In the right-hand corner, you can see the version in which you are working, and you can always change it in any time. Just click on the drop-down. You can select the version in which you would like to work. You have the different possibilities, like if you have to open the different different tiles in the middle. Vanillin, can we please go back to the home? So the home contains, as we've seen, these security roles like configuration, localization, version management, value help, and so forth. And if you paid attention in the beginning, we haven't assigned the localization role to our user. So the localization is grayed out and we cannot access that that tile for now. Of course, if we assign the respective privileges, this will be also available. One feature, of course, which we have here is you can put different tiles into your favorites, which are on the top left corner. So let's click there. And those favorites are accessible from there no matter where they are currently found in the process control center. One thing which you see in front of the localization is that the security icon, which means that the localization is not accessible at the moment because you don't have respective rights for it. But you managed to put it as a favorite because probably in the beginning or somewhere in the past you had that privilege and you added it as a favorite, so it's there. Once you get that role back, you'll be able to navigate also to that respective tile. So let's focus now on the configuration, where we have different options for configuring some important things about the process. Let's start with the fields. So one thing which of course is very important for the fields is that those are the fields that we'll see also later in the user interfaces inside the process. So here we should define a list of fields which we would like to use, and those fields of course later will be somehow visible in our auto-generated user interfaces. Those fields here can be more or less created in a couple of ways. One way would be of course to import them from Excel. Another way would be to import them from a third-party system, like let's say for example from ERP, and then we have to do some small configurations on them. like we can define if some of the fields have to have some predefined search helps, and those search helps can be loaded also from either a third-party system, can be loaded from a file manually, or can be just typed by hand. We're going to see that also in a second. So those fields, of course, are not bringing much information just by looking at them. We have to organize them in some kind of a layout. So let's go back to the main screen and go to the user interfaces in the layouts. And we can define as many layouts as we want for our different interfaces, and those layouts are structured in such a way that there is the major component or the major group is called a tab, and then under the tab we can have different groups with different fields inside or different tables. So let's open one of those. So we have here, let's say, a number of fields, and those fields, of course, you guessed correct, are coming from the field section. So once you create a field in the field section, you also see it here, and you're able to attach different fields to that group. And those fields, of course, can be also organized in a table, and you see in the text group, the text data table contains 4 fields which are attached to it. Okay, now of course we have the layout, we have the fields, but now we need to define to which row do those layouts belong. So let's go back to the business rows and to explain a little bit about that. If you remember, in one of the slides which we mentioned, there we spoke about business rows, and business rows are actually built of 4 components. Yeah, let's go there. And those 4 components contain the row, which you can imagine as a step in the process. Okay, so we have here requester, procurement manager, finance manager, the search, another finance manager from another country, and then a master data manager. And those rows, as I said, you can imagine those as a step in the process. Then we have another component, which is the organization. The organization is something which is defining for which scope this business row is going to apply, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Then we have the process type, because each process has different variants, so you can have let's say a process type create, process type change, suppress, or some other process type which makes sense. So this is, if you would like to limit this row only to a specific process type, you just put the process type there, or if you just want to use it for all of them, you can just put any, and then it's used for any of the processes. And the action is the 4th component, which can be used according to the process object in question for the specific process. In this case, we use it as a material type, because this is a material process. We can limit the material type for which the respective business row is active with using the action. Okay, the rest of the things, of course, is just the business row name, which is concatenated from those 4 attributes, and some business row description which can be entered by the person who is creating the row. Now let's go back to the navigation menu, yeah, and open the rows, the rows, yeah, and open the rows themselves. And you see, as we spoke about that, rows could be process steps, or could be also, let's say, for example, like the search admin, could be the business row needed in order for somebody to be able to search for different materials before they start the process. So, of course, it makes sense that before you create a new material, you would like to search for some material and make sure that it's already there. And there's also a business role for that. We're going to see in a bit later how that works. For now, let's click on the properties of those rows. And the properties are defining some specific attributes for each of the process steps, where you can define your own attributes, and there are also some predefined attributes, like, for example, the owner. And the owner of the row is the one that created it in the first place, and he's also responsible to, for example, approve if somebody wants to do some changes with that row. So he has some important role in that creation and changing of respective process steps. Another property, as I said, is to simply create a new property for for that role, and this property is available then in the respective step. Once the person is identified with that role, it can be read and used for some specific purposes of the process. Yes, you see also you have a visual display of the changes, and you know exactly what you have changed and if you have some unsafe changes. So let's go back. We're not going to focus on that right now. Let's go to the organizations. And for the organizations, what I mentioned is very important. It's not just a name which stays behind the organization, but also there are predefined values which actually coordinate the name, or let's say define the name in a business sense. So let's go to the add keys, and you see, for example, for Germany, the sales organization would be X100 with different distribution channels and plants. So all those combinations are valid combinations which are defining Germany as the country Germany. So it's not just a text which somehow we have to keep track of it, but it's a real sales organization, distribution channel, and plant organization which has to be defined in such a way in order to be a valid organization called Germany. You see in very short where this is used. Before that, let's jump again to the layout. And here, okay, to the assignment of the layouts, yes. And here we're going to see where we are actually assigning the layouts which you have seen already to the respective business roles. And this is the layout where this happens. So you have business roles on the left-hand side in the first column. And those business roles we have seen already are actually a combination of 4 attributes. And those 4 attributes are defining exactly a certain step in the process. So let's say, for example, requester any means that this is a business role which is for the step requester. Doesn't matter for which country, doesn't matter for which process type, it doesn't matter for which material type. And there we have attached the initiator layout to it. And of course, what we want to do is before we have the process ready, we would like to see how this user interface is going to look like. So we can click on the preview button. And this is going to generate us absolutely the same user interface that we are also going to see later in the real process. And you see this is the layouts which we have configured. So we have let's say the sales data tab, the text tab, the evaluation tab with all the different properties inside. We have a header on the right hand side, which is a fixed type of layout element which is always staying on top no matter which of the tabs on the left hand side you are choosing. And there are also a lot of other features which we're going to see directly in the process. For now, what's important is that you see also some predefined values, and those predefined values are part of the default values which you are able to define for every business role. Let's go back to the assignments. So you see on the right hand side you have a tick which is green right now because all the fields which are attached to that layout have been configured. And if you click on this, you'll see that we have 2 very important attributes. One is the default value, and the default value is something which is important for the current step. So if nobody enters any data in this field until this point of the process, then this default value will be pre-filled automatically on that step, thus saving a lot of effort for the people that have to maintain the mask with one and the same values. And probably for different countries and different regions, there are different default values, and that's why we also give the possibility to just change the organization here and apply that for any other organization which you would like to use, and create new business roles for other countries and other default values. The other thing, of course, is the status, which can be chosen between editable, required, and hidden, and read-only, of course. And this is defining the type of the field and what it has to be done on that respective step with that field. So let's not waste more time on the configuration. Let's go to the runtime and open the search UI. And the search UI is, of course, in order to be able to access the search UI, you need a business role which is of type search, and you see the role here which is selected is search admin with any, which means automatically that you are you are available, or you are allowed to search for materials which are for any of the organizations which are already created in the Persistence Manager, and those values are automatically pre-populated in the drop downs which you see below. So if you go to the organization, you see that the 3 organization values which we have, Bulgaria, Germany, and Hungary, are already there, and you're able to search. One thing which is important is if you select the organization, let's click again, for example, on Bulgaria, all the other values, if you see, are also changing depending on the organization which you select, because of course, as I told you, behind the organization there's a real values which are defining this organization, and you cannot search for Bulgaria and look for a German sales organization, for example. So that's why we select Germany. We saw X100 was the sales organization which was allowed there, with plant XLP1 and distribution channel. So let's search now. This is a real connection to the data, to the backend. So it will take some time for those materials to come up. Okay, and we are looking at the list of the materials which are coming from DRP. We probably don't find the right material, and you just want to create a new one. One important thing before we start creating the new one is the version, which you have to pay attention on the left-hand corner. We're going to come back to that in just a second, but for now it's important for you to see that you are able actually to work in 3 different versions. One is the working version, and another one is the active version, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. So let's just start another process for that material, and you see also here that the next process request number which you get is 19, which was also mentioned in the process administration, if you remember. Now if you go there and check it, the next process number will be shown. So let's go to the inbox and check. Okay, so we have the process. Let's open it. And this is the requester step. So all the data which is respective for the requester will be pre-populated here, because this is the first step and we haven't changed anything and we haven't input anything. You see on the top there is also the name of the task, the request number, the organization for which it's going to open, and also very importantly at the end the version for which it's going to open. So let's discuss now very shortly what are the different possibilities within the user interface. One thing which is very important is you're able to search across different tabs for data. So let's go, for example, to the tags and search for 001. So you see automatically the material number and the transportation group, which were however in the sales data tab, are displayed there. And if you click on the transportation group, it will automatically navigate to the sales data tab and make the focus on top of the 001 value. So this means that on a mobile device with a very small screen, you are very flexible to simply navigate to the field you need. And of course, you should not only search by value, but you can just type transportation, let's say. Let's go back to the valuation or to the tax, and then search for transportation. So you see again the value and the label are displayed, and you can, by clicking on them, you are able to navigate to the respective fields and fill your data. Another thing which is very important is the filter on the top left corner, the top right corner, sorry. So this is the mobile filter, which is the idea of that mobile filter is to limit the number of fields that you're going to see on the screen. And the idea here is that, for example, if you want to send some layouts to an executive that would like to have only the very important fields like budget or some very high level fields which are for approval, and he wants to see only those fields, then very easily you can use the same layout which everybody else are seeing, but switch the mobile filter on, and then only the respective fields will be shown. And you see here we have predefined a very small amount of fields which will be shown to that specific user in case it's open on a mobile device. If you open it on a desktop device, then of course you can always switch it back and you're going to see all the fields. This is a filter which can be also enabled on the mobile device. You don't have to really use it by default. Okay, another very important thing is on the bottom right corner. So you are allowed, of course, to share comments between the different steps. So you can always just put a comment here, and this comment will be visible also for the next steps in the process. And what is important is once you store that comment, you are also able to see who stored it and on which step and when it was stored. And of course, you are also allowed to bring attachments into the workflow, and those attachments are going to be visible also for all the people or all the rows afterwards. Another thing which is possible is to see the person who actually started the request, and also some other important data like the request number, the process type, the business role which was used to start the process, which is the current step which you are right now processing, and which is the version in which you are currently working. So let's go back to the Process Control Center in order to talk very shortly about versions. Let's go to the version management and explain you what the idea behind the versioning is. So versions, as you can see, you can have as many versions as you want. Some of them can be active. You can have one working version, and this working version is the version in which you can do some changes. So the working version is the version that you are currently working on. You are experimenting something, you're planning a change, whatever. You do that in a working version. Once you are completed and ready, you activate that version, and then this version is closed. You cannot do any more changes on that. And the idea behind that is that when you start the process based on an active version, then you're absolutely sure that this process is going to run on a stable release, which is this active version. If there are any bugs or any problems in it, you have to create a working version from that, fix those bugs, and activate it again. So basically, end user versions are running only on active default versions. As you see, there is the third row in the table is the default version, and automatically end users without any special privileges, but still with privileges to start the process, will automatically start using that version by default. However, if you are the administrator, you are allowed, as you have seen also from the search mask, to select which version you would like to start in order, for example, to debug, to test your working version or whatever. Once you have tested it, you can activate it, set it as default, and automatically all new processes will be run with that respective version. So right now you see we are the search admin, and that's why we are allowed to select in which version we would like to process the respective task. So if we go back to the versioning, another very important feature of the working version is that you are able to revert any of the changes which you have already done in that version, and this is done in the view changes mode. So you see that button in front, the revert, and once you do that, all the changes which have been done in that respective action are reverted along with all the actions which are also preceding that or after that action. So for example, right now, if we revert this one, we're going to also revert the change which was done at 237, the create property with name test prop. So let's go back. This functionality of the revert, of course, is not available for the active versions because the active versions are closed and they cannot be changed. There we have the possibility either to view only the changes that were done, or let's go back, or to see the audit trail, which is much more detailed. Let's open the audit trail. So the audit log is basically containing all the changes which were done in a specific release, and also you see this is version independent, so it's containing all the different versions in the third column. So you see from, let's say, the last two rows in the audit log are actually from version 2.1, and they were done in an older release. Okay, let's go back. So how is this versioning impacting the runtime of the process? You can see that in the two of the tasks which we have opened. So let's open the inbox again. So we have two tasks here which are started with one active and one working version, which are on the step master data. And there you see in the step, you see also the version, which is 3.10, and the other one is 2.10. And as you have seen, 2.10 is an active version, and 3.10 is our working version. So the changes which we do on a working version will automatically be represented in the process once we open it. And for 2.10, no matter what changes we do to the process, they won't be affected because it's a fixed and closed version. So we can try that out. Let's open the 2.10. No, this was the other one, but no matter, let's open the other one also. So we're going to need both versions anyway. Okay, so you see also from the title, it's the, let's go back to the 2.10. Yes, it's the 2.10 version, which is the active one, and it has some special special settings, like for example, the whole header currently is being read-only. And we have some master data which can be changed. The one important thing which you see here, which has not been visible in the requester, is the red exclamation mark next to the field. And if we click on that, it brings us the full history of changes that have been done for that respective field. And those, of course, were not visible in the requester step because there we didn't have any values. So for all the steps which are after the requester step, we have this exclamation mark, which gives us a history, a full audit trail of changes which have been done for a respective field. And you see there is like the value, if it was a creation, if it was a modification, when it was done, by whom it was done, and on which step of the process it was done. So basically all the information you need, which later of course you can also get in a report, but for those people who are processing the mask right now, this is something important and they have to know, especially when something is already deleted. This will also appear if a specific value is deleted from a certain field and the field is left blank. Nevertheless, the history will track that and show that somebody on a specific step deleted this value. So let's open also the 3.10 version. Okay, it's on the, now this is the requester step. We have to open it on the same step, which is the master data manager. Let's open it just again from the inbox. Okay, so yes. And this is the process with number 18. And here you see there are already some changes compared to the 2.10. There are some header information which are available for editing. But let's do another change now. Go to the control center and change something else in the 3.10. And then we simply just have to refresh it and the changes will be there, while the 2.10 version will remain stable and keep running in the background as it used to for all the end users. So let's open the, yes, this is the approval layout, and let's just probably, yeah, just to change the place of the EN codes. Okay, that's a good one. And then also let's save this one and also go to the fields and change the label of some of the fields. Okay, so let's change, okay, let's just remove the sales and leave it, yes, okay, save it. All right, let's go back to the 3.10, yes, and let's find, okay, the sales unit of measure is in the master data first column, so let's refresh this UI. And you see the units of measure is now the new label, and also we have moved the EN code on top, and now it's also appearing on top instead of the material number, which was previously on top. Now let's go back to the active version, which is the previous, I think, no, the top, there somewhere. No, the next one. Yes, and now let's do a refresh here. So basically nothing is going to change. Yeah, you will see material number is still there. We still have the sales unit of measure, and this is our stable release, which is running productively in the system and can be used by other users. So in shortly said, that's everything we had to show you so far. For any questions, you can use the chat in the chat session window. We will be more than happy to answer. And of course, if you find that presentation interesting, you're always welcome to request a demo of all features, and we'll be more than happy to provide that. So right now, please use the time to summarize your questions, and we'll be ready to answer. Let's use the time. I will take just the control. Can you? Okay. So one important thing which you have to know is in order to get your certificate, you're going to receive an email, as I already mentioned, and this email you have to answer some questions and guess correctly 8 out of 10 questions, and then you also receive a certificate for participating in the webinar. Okay, no questions yet, so in case there is, we're going to wait 1 more minute, and in case there's no other questions, then we are going to close the session. Thank you everybody for your time, and as mentioned, okay, there is one question. How do you define a data validation? Very valid point. So I'm going to switch back to Vanillin. I'm going to show you just in the user interface. So basically, there are standard validations which are already implemented into the user interface. So this would be, let's say, with regards to the limit of how many characters a certain field can have, how many, what type it is. So you can just, let's say, if you put an integer type, then you can put only numbers and things like this. But I assume you're asking for a more complex type of validations. Of course, this is possible. And we have a predefined template which is created with the business rules. So this is also something quite flexible. You don't have to write lines of code in the user interface. Rather, define those validation rules in a business rule. And this business rule is being interpreted by the user interface at runtime, and using those business roles, so basically defining for which business role a specific validation has to be done. Then you can define that in the business rules, and during runtime, this data validation can be applied to the specific field. It's not only about data validation, but also about data derivation. So it's also possible, for example, to define rules. Let's say if the field BUOM is kg, so kilogram, then the gross weight cannot be more than 1,000, for example. Or you can simply use the same value, let's say kg, and populate it everywhere where you have units of measure once it's changed at one place. So such kind of derivations and validations are achieved using the business rules, which probably you know that are also quite flexible and don't require any additional coding. It's just a kind of a configuration for which business role you want them to apply, and once this is done, they are active in the system. Unfortunately, I don't have a demo for that right now, but this can be done on a separate session for sure. All right, so we are about to close the session. If you didn't have the time to ask your question, don't mind contacting us with it specifically per email. We will be more than happy to answer. Thank you again for taking part into the webinar, and we're looking forward to your comments later. The whole recording will be available in the IBsolution Academy website. So let me just get back the presentation. Okay, so for all of you who would like to see the presentation recorded, just visit academy.ibsolution.de, and you have the video recording there, and you can also take part into the certification questionnaire also later. So thanks again, and see you in the next webinar. Have a great day.